right. Hojin, so great to have you. Where does this podcast find you?
So I'm sitting here in my shared studio in Berlin Moabit. It's very cold here, but I've got my heaters, so I'm fine.
If there's one thing I don't miss, it's the winters in Berlin. I can tell you that. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Hojin Kang, and I was born in Cologne, Germany, which is in Western Germany. I studied in Saarbrücken at the HBK. It's the art school in Saarbrücken. It's also like the place where we met each other, which I'm very grateful for. After studying graphic design and media art and design, I moved to Hamburg for 2 years and then ended up in Berlin 2016.
Great. And as you mentioned, this is a very special conversation for me. Certainly, we have not actually seen each other in what we figured out earlier, probably 18 years ish. So it's fantastic to get a chance to reconnect. And I also just before we dive into all the questions I have for you, which are many, when you went to Hamburg and the work that you did was initially really in very prestigious design agencies, and I know that's still part of the work that you do, which is exciting. But then eventually you put a lot more focus on your art and the work that you're doing as an artist. So today, I will ask you some questions regarding your design work, but first and foremost, I want to make sure we get a chance to dive into your art, because it's something that has really consistently over the years inspired me, and I hope will inspire a lot of people that listen to this. So when people go to your website, they check out your art, a lot of the titles of your body of work are really interesting and fascinating to me. And I'm just going to read a few because I think it's a great segue into the rest of the conversation. So some of them are called Do You Breathe When You Scroll? Please Wait, or Scrolling Prayer Beads. So these are all sort of references to our digital daily lives. And just if you can tell us a little bit about what's behind, the work, those titles, and just maybe in general, what drives your artistic curiosity in that direction of examining our specifically digital lives.
Yeah, so I would say like I draw a lot of my inspiration from tradition and technology, which means tradition of my Korean heritage, which is rooted in Buddhist and Confucian culture and philosophy, but also technology. Like I was always fascinated by technology. Like I can remember buying my first Game Boy or like getting my first Game Boy when I was like 6 years old or something. So I was always also like drawn to technology and interactive media. So these are two things that always accompanied me in my daily life. My dad also had this martial arts school in Cologne when I was 9 years old. And I always have to open up the school and clean up the school before the students came. And there was also like these moments where I'm like 9 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, when my dad told me like, okay, you have to meditate to calm yourself. You're too, I don't know, like too worked up or something.
Yeah.
So this mindfulness, which is now very, very mainstream, like this was always part of my life. And looking at these two different parts, like the tradition and technology, there are also like a lot of similarities. I see parallels there. Like, for example, when you look at how social media works, how like our feeds work there, like how Instagram works. So you have this, these posts which are connected, and if you scroll through them with your finger one by one, like after a while, you don't remember what you looked at.
Right.
And I remember my grandma in Korea, she was Catholic, and she had these prayer beads. And she took them everywhere. Like she went to the kitchen with the prayer beads, but also to the bathroom. And she didn't have a smartphone back then. So what she did was like saying something, like probably praying something and using this prayer beads. And when I realized how she used the prayer beads, and then I saw how I use or we use in the modern society our smartphones to kill some time, but also maybe as a tool for meditation or a tool for introspection in a way. Yeah, I'm fascinated
Yeah.
by these similarities or by these findings.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And I remember clearly when I saw this specific piece of the scrolling prayer beads, which I would encourage everyone to actually go to your website, which we'll link to in the show notes, and go check out what they actually look like. And there's a video, I believe, of someone using them. On the one hand, it's really interesting because the human behavior that you're describing, that you've observed, which in itself for me blew my mind because I hadn't thought about it that way. And then I saw the work and it immediately, of course, clicked. But it is interesting because that the behavior is very similar. But then on the other hand, you basically have this extreme tension between mindlessness and mindfulness, right? One is really, if you use it with intention, the prayer beads are supposed to be a form of meditation and cultivating mindfulness. And then on the other hand, you have your scrolling behavior, which we all very much so know, that is absolutely mindless and really doing the opposite of moving you inwards. In fact, oftentimes it's really just hijacking your brain to just give you one after the other dopamine hit, right? So I think it's incredibly fascinating to think about that tension that we find in our lives, and even just putting the awareness there, and then hopefully becoming more mindful and intentional about when we use which tool and what the goal is in using that. So that's really fascinating to me. Now, another piece, which I believe was from the same exhibition that you did, was or is this notification bell sculpture, which I would love for you to talk about, because I had and I can share this after you've talked about the work. I had a very intense reaction to that. So why don't you maybe just talk about that a little bit? What inspired it? How does it work? So everyone can learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So the notification bell or the mindfulness bell is also inspired by this tension between tradition and technology, where we probably are all located like in our present time right now. So there was always like this need or this wish inside me to meditate more. Probably inspired by my father, who always said like, okay, sit down, meditate, don't be so worked up. So there was always like this wish, okay, if I meditate more, I will be more calm and maybe a better person. But then there's also like now the world of the smartphone, or like the age of the smartphone, where we live in, where we get like constant notifications. Bing, there's like a new message on Instagram. Bing, there's a new email coming in, and so on and so forth. So there again, I saw this parallel between technology and tradition. They're like they both use bells. There's like this meditation bell, like this gong, which starts like a Buddhist meditation, for example. And there's like this notification bell we all know from smartphones. I saw this icon on my iPhone the other day and thought like, okay, I have to make a sculpture out of it. Like this will be amazing. And then I built it in 3D, printed it in 3D, put it on this pedestal, and thought, okay, now when visitors come in and see this kind of spiritually looking sculpture,
and it's all white, right?
And it's all white, of course. Like so it's like a mixture of a spiritual religious temple and Apple store. And then you come in there, and then but you hear this notification sound everybody knows nowadays, and it doesn't hit once like in a meditation session. It hits all the time. And suddenly, like, people, they're looking for their phones. Like, shit, I'm in this museum environment, and I should mute my phone, right? And then it's not my phone. Where is it coming from? So playing with this tension, right?
Yeah. And the physiological response that I observed in myself is intense. It just makes you realize how we're so conditioned to specifically that sound, right? It is incredible when you experience it, and especially when you, of course, in a museum kind of setting. I think it just heightens the response. And then you have the social awareness, as you said, around you. This is not supposed to happen, but you start to realize how conditioned we are and how conditioned our brains are to, there is that hit of biochemical reaction that you're getting. Exactly. And going back to
Absolutely.
the scrolling prayer beads, which I think it makes it so clear the impact that these technologies and these, now going back a little bit to the very beginning, the design decisions that I certainly, hold myself accountable there as having been in the tech industry for about 20 years now, the responsibility that we have and the impact we have on not just people's life on a very rational, functional level, but on an emotional and physiological level. To me, that sculpture really, does a job like nothing else that I've experienced in the art world to really kind of pull that out.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I think this is like also again where our path crosses, like Benedict, right? Where the technological world or the tech industry world and the art and world of traditions and religions like pass and cross again. Like there is this unconscious impact and influence we have on society and on especially on younger people who now use these tools like like tools as we used or we consumed like television before.
Yeah.
So it was mindless in a way.
Yeah.
I would say like, yeah.
Supercharged essentially now because it's always there, right? It's always on, it's always there. But just to kind of add one additional thought, because to me, as you said, these worlds are so intersected, and part of why I'm having these conversations with people like you is to create more awareness, but also to use all of these insights and start envisioning how do we lead into a better future. I had a student of mine at Princeton. She studied neuroscience and art. She, as one of her, I think her junior paper, she did research on addictive behaviors, especially as it relates to social media. And after she was done writing the paper, she deleted pretty much halfway through the writing process, she deleted all the social media apps from her phone and said, I can't do this, right? I can't use these anymore. I'm realizing what it does. And so I think your work does an incredible job without being patronizing or talking down at people, to just make them experience some of those effects in a way that hopefully some people can rethink their relationship that they have with the technology.
Thank you so much. Like this was also my goal, to be honest, like just the things you said. I don't have this solution to it, right? Like I'm just a normal person. I'm interested in art, technology, and our society as a whole. So I'm not coming up with solutions in my artworks. Like these are observations of our world. So I'm just sharing the observations and the parallels and the feelings I get from our contemporary time, so to speak. Yeah. So if like a person comes to my exhibition, experiences like the mindfulness bell, for example, or the prayer beads, and goes home and has like maybe like a clicking moment or something, this is the best case scenario.
Yeah, that makes sense. So before we move on to some other questions that I had, I need to ask you, because you mentioned twice that your father had you meditate whenever you felt worked up. I am trying the same, both for myself, but also trying to cultivate that with my daughter. And so the question to you is, I know you have a son. I know he's still quite young, but do you make him meditate too?
So he's 3.5 years old and he's a wild horse. He's a whirlwind. I was a lot more introverted, to be honest. He's like super extroverted and I love it about him, but it's also very exhausting, of course. No, to be honest, like I didn't like yet try to meditate with him. I would say like he's too young, but also after the experience I had with my dad, I would try a different approach.
As so many of us, we're learning and unlearning.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Just because I have so many questions for you. One that I really wanted to ask you about was your use of technology, not just your reference of technology observations, but your use of technology, which is an essential part to the way you practice your art and your exhibitions as well. You already mentioned earlier sculpting in 3D software, I assume, and then using 3D printing to produce the artwork. I also know that you're using augmented reality, you're using AI tools in your work. And I love all of that, especially because of the focus of your work. But how do you see these technologies really driving some of the artwork that you're doing? How do you leverage them? And then, of course, my big question for you is, what do you see are the biggest challenges right now when it comes to our relationship with AI, with all of these new, very immersive technologies? So you can take the question any one way, but I think you have very early on been working with this and have for a long time now. So I would love to get your take on all of that.
Yeah. So when I think about all these different technologies I already used for my artworks, like starting with projection mapping and using the body as an interaction tool with the Microsoft Kinect, and now focusing a lot on like 3D printing and augmented reality and AI, of course. Technology is always there. There's always this curiosity, experimenting and playing around with new technology, like giving a child a new toy which he or she never saw before, testing out all like the boundaries of this new toy. And I always try to remember that in the end it is just a tool. So I always try for myself to be some kind of like emancipated by the
Yeah.
tool. So if, for example, tomorrow there would be no AI anymore, or no augmented reality, or not the possibility to use augmented reality anymore, I could still continue with my art, so to speak. So this is always something I have in mind. Maybe it's because like I grew up in an analog time where I had pencils and pens and brushes
I like
creating
this.
artworks.
Yeah, I like this idea of or notion of emancipation, because especially in the current hype cycle that we're in around this new, certainly AI technology, I think there's something incredibly valuable for humans to gain by this notion of emancipation and staying emancipated and using, because I think only from that place you can actually then determine how you want to use the technology. And especially, now, again, my observation in the technology industry is that there's a very dominant narrative around this technology is going to take over everything, and it's going to, take over jobs, and it's going to do this and automate that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it creates this underlying narrative of there's nothing we can do about this. It's going to happen this way. Um, this whole idea of transhumanism that is perpetuated through that. I personally don't subscribe to, but I think in order for us to make use of the technology in a positive way, we need to first get to this place that you're describing of emancipation, of a certain level of confidence in our ability to harness this technology, but also to always say, well, no, at the end of the day, I'm in control.
Absolutely.
And I can mold this technology in the way that I see fit. What do you think are the core qualities that we need to cultivate to have that healthy sense of emancipation and confidence, maybe even creative confidence?
Looking at the geopolitical happenings right now, and also looking at the technological topics right now, I think the first thing I would tell my son and these children is like not losing hope in humanity. And then the second thing would be curious about technology, but be even more curious about humanity and humans. So what makes us humans, and what do we need? What are the needs of us as individuals and us as a collective. This would be maybe something I would like tell my son and maybe also like students starting there, like as a fundament. And there is also this embodied cognition theory, right? This interrelation between the mind and the body. So you can't think of the mind and the body as separate entities. It's
Right.
all interconnected. Like the body influences the mind, but the mind also influences the body, which is one of the core features of our human application, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, focus on that. Like really focus on that and train that. Like never lose that. Never lose that out of your sight.
Yeah.
Regardless of which technology comes afterwards, even if it's AI or brain to robot interfaces or whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like that perspective. And if there's one thing about this connection between our minds and our bodies that I've been thinking quite a bit about, and in the context of, how do we lead into the future, is the creative act, right? The act of creating, which we're inherently born with, right? Every child, when you see them, they're incredibly creative.
Absolutely.
That ability to create and make things, right, with whatever tools you have. And you mentioned earlier, I think we both had the good fortune to be trained still in very analog techniques. And one of the core memories that I have of you and I, and maybe we can even put up a photo. I know there's an old photo of you and I in our art school studio together, but it's this ability to make something, right? No matter the tool. And you trained in foundational principles, from color and color psychology to shapes and giving shape to objects and ideas, that I think builds that creative confidence, because it's not just a intellectual act. It's actually through the making that you're cultivating that creative confidence, which probably is at the core of this emancipation that
Absolutely.
you were mentioning.
Absolutely. The relationship I have with the world through my body, through my hands, through my skin, which is like our first the first relationship we have with this world. When you look at like small children, right? Like they don't start in VR or something,
That's
or
right.
they don't start like prompting. The first years are like getting confidence, like standing on 2 feet, touching, like taking stuff in their mouth. And of course, like we develop as we get older and everything. And like I said before, like I'm also very curious about all new technology, but always with a big but, like not letting these fundaments out of your sight. And also maybe block some time to train these fundaments, which could be like very traditional techniques, like really like yoga, meditation, whatsoever, martial arts, but it could be also something completely else. Just not losing this relationship to your mind and your body.
Yeah. No, we are, we are physical beings, right? That's how we connect with the world, as you say. That's how we connect with each other, which is probably the perfect segue. We couldn't have set it up any better, to your latest work, which is titled, and I need to get this right, The Warmth That Binds Us. And I remember you sending me the concept initially. And I mean, I loved it from the get-go, but I let you talk about it. What is it about? Just walk me and everyone who's listening and watching through what this project is about.
Yeah. So The Warmth That Binds Us is still a work in progress. Still looking for some funding. So everybody listening to right now, maybe if you're interested, it's a media installation. It's a video installation. The main focus lies on thermal images, like a thermal image film I filmed with thermal image cameras,
which are, just for everyone, are cameras that record the heat signature of objects, specifically in your case, humans, right?
Absolutely. So in my case, probably like these thermal images from national borders, for example, where thermal image cameras are used for people hiding in the forest. It's also used for hunting deers, for example, in the night, because like, of course, like the heat signatures are perfect to find,
Living beings.
living bodies. And I found this aesthetic, but also the idea of not recording humans with traditional photography, but with thermal image camera, so fascinating. So I started recording my family. So what I did now is, for the last month, to record my son, also record my partner, the mother of my son, also record my parents, the grandparents of my son, and also friends, like in quite normal situations where we meet up, where we take a walk at the beach, where we sit on the couch, where we hug each other, where we just sit down and eat together. What happens is that you like that these visual details, like hair color or clothes, they disappear in this aesthetic, and suddenly you only see like 2 or 3 colorful blobs interacting with each other, intersecting into each other. And like, I also combine these thermal images with translucent materials. So if you play around a little bit with these translucent materials and these thermal images, you get this kind of like a immaterial metaphysical forms.
Yeah,
Suddenly,
it's beautiful.
suddenly you don't have like these 2 people, like the mother and the child next to each other. Suddenly there are like two big forms, 2 big blobs of heat next to each other,
Right.
which is just fascinating for me.
So, but there's a second component to at least the way you're planning the exhibition, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if the visitor comes into this installation, there will be also infrared heat sensors, and the whole space will get heated up. So you really experience the warmth that you see on this thermal image projection. So it becomes like a really embodied experience. Like, this is something I'm always interested in, like having these embodied, more or less also like very emotional experiences you get like when you see art.
As I said earlier, from the moment I read the concept, I was absolutely fascinated. Then there's so many layers to it, right? You mentioned earlier how these cameras are being used in life or death situations, right? But then when you look at, for example, traditional Chinese medicine, where heat is life force, right? And
Absolutely.
then you have this the making this visible, and having the visitors then eventually in the museum or the gallery experience a heat signature that is generated based on what you've recorded. And then the absolute aesthetic beauty of the way these show up and I've seen some of your demos, your tests, is just incredible. And I think it has the same kind of quality we talked about earlier, where it really makes you think about yourself and the way we interrelate with others, not just in terms of the direct recordings of the videos that you have, but for me is the whole, well, how do we connect as a society where we're using these kind of technologies to not necessarily connect with the people that we're recording?
Absolutely. Also, what I said before, like you or you saw these thermal images in relation to national borders or something, like where like illegal immigrants are being kept off the national border. And of course, right now, like geopolitically, this is like the big topic. And there is like this tendency right now of division. Um, and I'm just fascinated in this technology, but also like fascinated in uniting, which is like a cliche, of course, but yeah, I'm fascinated in the qualities that unite us,
Yeah.
regardless of gender, skin color, and religion. Like when you look at these thermal images, like there is no skin color in the end. So my family is also like a migrant family, made up of guest workers from Korea, and yeah, we are like a biracial family now with my German partner. So when you look at like traditional photographs of us, you see skin color, you see different like cultures, but you don't see them on these thermal images.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning, because you're trained as a designer and you're now still, to a certain degree, sometimes from what I know, work as a designer. How do you reconcile the way we are trained as designers to, be commercially focused, focus on function in the work that we do predominantly, versus, as an artist, you're focusing on, expressing first and foremost your personal observations with a goal to, as you said earlier, not have answers, but ask questions, or hopefully have the visitor, the viewer, ask themselves questions in order to provoke, right? To move them into a different mental state, emotional state, what have you. So how does that look like for you? How do you navigate that? How do you balance that?
So that's a super question. I would say in my art projects, the lead is the artist inside me, which is like influenced by curiosity. So I'm curious about a thing, an idea, a material, or a feeling or something. It moves me, or it just overcomes me. I can't stop thinking about it. So I have to deal with it. I have to explore it. The designer comes later. He's still there, and he's always there. And I would say like the designer has the role of a quality manager. So like if like the artist part is like more driven by emotions and is not as detailed and not as like perfectionistic or as aesthetically, the designer has like this role of quality manager where he vetoes like a decision, or he's not like satisfied with the production of something. And so there is like this conflict in between like the the emotional lead and the very craft driven designer. And in the end it's like a question of budget and time, right?
True. That's a fair point. Yeah. Very good. Very good. That is a really interesting spin on what I was trying to get to. And really the reason I asked was because I do believe in the times that we're living through now, and in order to really build a future that we all want to live in a humanistic future, we actually need to cultivate more of the qualities of the artist that you described, of leaning into the curiosity, leaning into the emotional experience, even and especially in the commercial context. One of the reasons I started this podcast and having these conversations and called it Poets and Thinkers is because I believe that in order for us to build a better future, we cannot seek for answers solely in the business schools and the MBA programs that have gotten us into this place. We need to look beyond that and really embrace the entirety of the human experience. And then I love the way you described the role of the designer to then shape, once we have leaned into that curiosity and lead into that emotional experience, then start shaping it into something that, of course, has commercial success and can work. But I think we need to definitely go beyond the very functional, rational, efficiency-driven processes in the way we approach work and building anything really in this world, from products to companies.
Yeah, like 100%. 100%. I would like also say like I think what will be so much more important in the next couple of years is not like motivated by an extrinsic. I think what will be so much more important in the next years will be like this intrinsic motivation and less the extrinsic motivation. So what I mean by that is that if we are only motivated by extrinsic motivation, which can be economy, which can be politics, which also can be aesthetics, I would say like the chance that we create something very meaningful and purposeful is quite small. And I would say if we lean more and take this risk to look into more in this intrinsic motivation, which doesn't always have to be like super emotional, super spiritual, super esoteric, you know what I mean? Like there is like also intrinsic motivation, which can be very rational in the end, but which really drives us and where there is like a real relevance. I see, great hope.
Yeah. No, I think that you're absolutely right. I think there is a certain level of integrity that is just important, a clarity of purpose and intention that is not as present in at least the business world often, where these external factors are the dominating factors, and finding a bit more of a balance, which is I think what you're trying to get to is critically important. Yeah, I think that's an absolutely great kind of wrap up, and it describes so much of why I are having these conversations, because I'm also learning and curious about where we can go. Before we wrap, two things. I just realized I probably still owe you money for lunch when we were in art school. So next time I see you in Berlin, I'll take you out for lunch or dinner. But the second thing is, what is next for you? What are you currently working on?
Yeah, so the next thing will be probably finding an exhibition space for the warmth that binds us. So the plan is to exhibit it this year, probably in Berlin. And there will be also like a teaching gig coming up at our former art school, probably in May, which also deals with the topic of mind, matter, and media, and this triangle. So yeah,
that's exciting. Well, I need to make sure that I come and see both. If they let me back in, I will make it there. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. I can't wait to see The Warmth That Binds Us as an actual exhibition. I'm super excited. We need to figure out how we get this to the US. I think this would be a great exhibition to be done maybe in New York City. So thanks again. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Benedict. It was an honor to be here and a pleasure seeing you again.
Thank you for listening to Poets and Thinkers. If you like this episode, make sure you hit follow and subscribe to get the latest episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.